Hey guys, what's up? This video is about creating a very small bookstore application project. On the server side, we will be using .NET Core Web Application with Web API controllers. We will use SQL database with Entity Framework as the data layer. On the client side, we will be using Handlebars templating engine and RxJS Observables to create the list of available books and to create a very small shopping cart widget also. So this is going to be a multi-part series of videos instead of being a longer video. You guys can watch the individual videos based on your availability. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the technologies which will be used for this project. As many of you may already know, ASP.NET Core is a cross-platform, high-performance, open-source framework for building modern cloud-based applications. It can be used to create apps and services on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. RxJS is a JavaScript library which makes it easier for us to handle callback based and asynchronous code using observables. RxJS is very useful in handling data which emits periodically. RxJS observers are kind of overkill for small applications but are pretty useful when an application scales itself over time. Handlebars, on the other hand, is a library which can be used to create templates for user interface view models. The templates can be combined with data source to create HTML elements. Using handlebars in a small .NET MVC application is very useful because we can quickly create the UI components by using HTML templates. It allows us to not use full-fledged frameworks like React and Angular when our requirements are small and not going to scale much in the future too. So this is the project which I will be creating using the technologies which I just mentioned. This web page consists of two sections. The first one on the left is the list of books and on the right there is a small shopping cart widget. We can add books to the shopping cart by clicking on the add to cart button. When we will click on any add to cart button for any specific book multiple times, then that item will be added multiple times in the shopping cart too, and the quantity will be updated along with the updated price. There will be a total which will be updated as and when the new books will be added to the cart. Also, this page is an infinite scrollable list, which simply means that we don't have to load all of the books altogether. Whenever the user will scroll to the end of the page, then new book items will be loaded automatically, just like how it happens in Facebook and Twitter websites. Alright then, let's get started with the code, but first I would like to thank all of you for watching this video, and if at any point of time while watching it you feel that this video is helpful for you, then please don't be shy and place a like on this video and also hit the subscribe button. Doing that will make sure that you will always stay updated with the new videos which are coming out every now and then. Alright, so this is Visual Studio Community 2017 and the first thing that I will do is to create a new project. This is going to be an ASP.NET Core web application. I'm going to name it as Bookstore App. Click on OK button. This is going to be a model view controller application and keeping the rest of this stuff as it is. Let's click on OK and create this application. Let's run this application initially to see how it is looking in the browser. This is the default content and we will be replacing it with the list of books which we will add to the database created using Entity Framework. We will use Entity Framework's code first approach to create the database table for the books, and the first thing that we need to do is to open up the NuGet package manager for this project. Open up the browse tab and search for Entity Framework. I have searched for Entity Framework Core and we need to download the dependency for this one, microsoft.entityframeworkcore.sql server, because I will be using a database created using SQL Express. Select the project to which we need to add this dependency and we need to select the correct version. Now this version should match with the version of .NET Core which is installed in our system. So I'm going to select 2.1.1 and then click on install. We also need to install the Entity Framework Core.tools for data migration and database update. And let's also select the correct version and click on install. The Entity Framework has been downloaded and now it's time to create the data model and the data context. So for that, the first thing I will do is to add a new class to this models folder. and this is going to be the class for the individual books. So let's name it book.cs, and inside this class I'm going to add the properties for which we need to add the columns in the book table in the database. So these are the properties. This is the ID and book name, the book author, description, price and rating, stock and image, file URL and so on. After we have created the book model, we need to create the books DB context, and for that I will add a new folder to this project. Let's just call this folder data. In this data folder I'm going to add a new class, and let's just name it as books DB. Press enter. Inside this class, first let's include the namespaces that we will need. The first one is the Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. The second one is the models, in which we have the book class, so using bookstore app dot models. Alright, then let's rename this as books DB context, and this is going to be inherit from the DB context class. First we will add a public property in this class, which is going to be of the type DB set, and this is going to of type book, and let's just call this books. We will use this property to fetch the list of books, so let's provide the empty getter and setter accessors for this property. We also need to override the onConfiguring method, because we need to provide the connection string for our database, which this entity framework will use for the code first approach. So override onConfiguring, and let's just remove this this base method calling, and using this options builder argument we need to call the use SQL server method, and inside this method we need to provide the connection string for our database, which does not exist right now. So let's now create the database first. To create the database we can use the server explorer and open it. Right click on the data connections, click on add new connection and select the server name. We need to provide the server name, and because I'm using SQL Express, I'm going to provide the name of the SQL Express server, and after doing that we can provide the database name which we want to be created if it doesn't exist. So I'm going to provide the name as bookstore and app. Alright, so when I will click the OK button, and if the database doesn't exist, then it will ask us that if we want to create a new database with that name, and we have to select yes. Click on yes and the database will be created. So our database has been done, and now it's time to copy its connection string and paste it inside this use SQL server method as an argument, and that can be done by right clicking on the properties and then copying the connection string from the properties window and then pasting it over here. Let's just use and add the rate sign over here. After we have provided the connection string, it's now time to open up the package manager console and execute the command add migration and then initial create. This will create a migration to create the schema of our database. Click enter, or press enter. After we have created the migration for the schema, we need to execute the command update database. Press enter, and this will apply the initial create migration to the database. And we can check if the table has been created or not by going in the SQL Management Studio and checking the table. So here is our database bookstore app, and here is the table. Right now this books table is empty, and I'm going to add some test data for it. So the test data has been added, and now we can check if the data is now in the table or not. So there are 15 records of the test data. Next, we need to create the web API controller for the books. That API controller will be used to fetch the list of books in the browser. So for that, go to the controllers folder, right click on it and add a new folder to it. Let's just call this folder as API and right click on this API folder and add a new controller. This is going to be an API controller with existing read and write actions. Name this controller as books controller. Click on add. So this is the API controller with some default get, post, put and delete methods. We will not be using the post, put and delete methods, and we are also not going to use this default get one. We will use this get one with an integer argument, and this method will be used to fetch the range of books which are applicable for any specific page number. So this id argument is going to be for the page number, and what we will do is we will figure out the range of books which is applicable for the page number argument which is being sent from the browser, and then we will provide the list of the books which are in that range to be added to the already existing collection of books. So first let's remove this string return value and replace it with an enumerable collection. And because we need to have the book class reference over here, we need to add its namespace too. So using bookstore app dot models, and we will also need to include the namespace of data folder because we will need to use the book data or the book db context. So let's provide the book class name over here. Now the first thing that we will do is to provide the number of books that we need to return for each page, and this will essentially mean that we need to specify the page size, and this is going to be 4 because 4 is a good enough number to cover the entire browser's page with the list of books. Now let's have the start position for the range of books which we need to return. So start position, and this is going to be page num -1, and we need to multiply it with the page size which will determine the size of this range. And now we need to fetch the entire list of books, and from that list we will skip the book items which are not in the page which is being provided as an argument, and we will pick those which belong to that page. So using and then where context equals to new books db context, and now inside it first we will create a list of books equals to context dot books dot to list. Now if the page number which has been provided has a valid range of books associated with it, then we need to return it, otherwise we will simply return an empty list of books. So if books.count is bigger than or equal to the start position which has been calculated, then we will return the range which is valid for the page number. So return books dot first skip the books which we don't need to return, so skip up to the start position, and then take the amount of books which is equal to the size of the page, so take page size. And now if the range is not available for the page number which is being provided as an argument, then we can simply return an empty list of books. So return a new list of book. And that's pretty much it for this web API controller method to return the books depending on the page number which has been provided. Now it's time to make the changes in the index view, and this can be done by opening this views folder and then go to the home folder, open this index.cs HTML file and remove the existing HTML content, because we are going to use Bootstrap's grid structure to structure our page by putting the list of the books on the left hand side and putting the cart widget on the right hand side. First let's add the div for the first 9 columns. So the class name for this is going to be call and then md and then 9. Next we can use the remaining 3 columns for the cart div, and that can be done by providing the class name as call md3. Now inside this first column we will need to provide the div to add the list of books or to append the list of books HTML items, and let's just provide this as an id of div books so that we can fetch its reference by using its id. And we will also need another div to basically provide the infinite scrolling feature for this entire page. So whenever this div loader div will be visible in the browser's viewport, then the books which belongs to the next page will be automatically loaded, and then they will be appended to the existing list. And this loader div is just there to show a CSS spinner, and we will need to add the CSS class for this spinner. For that, we need to open the site.css file and we can add the class over here. So this loader class is for the CSS spinner animation. This is a pretty basic class with a very simple rotating animation, and you will see how it will work. Let's add the HTML required to set up the cart div widget in the later part of this video series. Let's now create the handlebars template for the individual books. So that can be done by first creating a new script element, and let's just provide it an ID, and this can be called as book template, and we can provide the type as text handlebars template because this will host or it will contain the handlebars template for the books. And because the HTML element which will be generated from this template will be inside this first column, we can set its CSS class as row. So first let's create a div and let's just set its class as row. Now we can divide this row in two columns. The first column is going to have the size of 3 columns. So this can be done by providing the class of col and then md and then 3. So this column will be there to have the picture of the book, and then we can create another column to have the rest of the information of the book, like its name, its author name, its description, etc. So in the first column we can provide the img element. So img src equals to, and then we need to provide the path of the image or the folder path from where the image will be loaded, and this will be images and then books, and then we can simply provide the token value for the name of the image of the book. So let's just do that. This will be image, and let's just provide some styling value to it so that it will be somewhat centered with a little bit amount of margin. Now it's time to create or add the rest of the information. So let's first have a heading of h3 type, and let's just provide the name of the book. This can be inside an anchor link if we will decide to load another page containing only the information for the book that we clicked on. So let's just have the name token between the anchor elements. So let's provide the name over here, and let's set the href as blank because we are not going to implement that individual page for all of the books. Let's place a line break over here. Now let's provide the information for the author name and by and then author. In the similar way we can add the rest of the information like the price, the rating and the description. Now for rating we are going to show an image from a sprite, and I will show you how we are going to show it. The class of the span over here is rating hyphen and then the value of the rating. So we need to add individual classes for each of the rating. The rating can be between 1 and 5, so we need to add 5 classes as well as a parent class to contain all of the common information for the rating image. Let's open up the site.css and add those classes. So these are the rating classes. This is the common styling information, this is the width, and this is the height. The background is going to be rating.png. This is the rating image, and you can see that this is a sprite, and all we need to do is to specify the coordinates of the section that we need to carve out from this image and then show on the web page. And I will show you a neat trick to get to know the coordinates of any part of any sprite. What you need to do is first you need to open up any sprite in Paint. When the image is opened in Paint, then click on the selection tool, and actually first you need to zoom it and then click on the selection tool. And now we need to figure out the x and y values because we already have a fixed height and width, so we don't need to really worry about that. We just need to be concerned about the x and y values. So place your pointer from where you need to carve out, or you need to cut out the image that you need to show on the web page, and then Notice the X and Y values in the bottom left corner of this status bar. Right now it is 153 and 31. So pick up a suitable value for X and use that same value when you are moving downwards. All we need to do is to pick up different Y values for all of the different images from this sprite. So we just need to move our pointer downwards to get all of those Y values, and we can eventually use those X and Y values to set up the background position of the image that we want to fetch from the sprite. And as you can see, after the hyphen, the rating value is over there. So this value will be automatically replaced by this tokens value, which is over here, and then we will have our rating image in the form of stars, which are either highlighted and grayed out. Let's add 2 more line breaks over here, and now let's also provide a span with just a simple text which will say that this book is in stock, because we are not going to implement the in stock functionality. It will be too much for this simple example. So for this project, let's just keep the text over here for visual purposes. Let's also provide some kind of styling information for the individual book items. Like for example, we can have a border radius and also a very simple border which is of 1px width, which is solid in black, and some padding and some top margin. Now let's copy this class name and we can use it for this topmost div, and we can use it after row. So our template for the individual books is finished for now. It's now time to write the code to fetch the list of the books depending on the page number, but we will do that in the next part of this video. Be sure to like this video and also subscribe to this channel if you think that this video is helpful for you. And I will see you in the next part of this video. Till then, have a great time.